Take a moment and look up at the night sky. It feels calm, distant, unbothered. Nothing about it hints that far beneath the highest mountains on Earth, a force is carving its way through solid rock. Right now, deep under the Tibetan Plateau, tunnels are being cut through mountains to redirect one of the planet's most powerful rivers. Why is this river being controlled? And what will happen to the people living downstream, who have no say in the decisions being made so far away? This isn't just about generating electricity. It's about control, power, and a gamble that could change lives far beyond where it begins. Ahead, we'll explore where this project began, why it's considered so dangerous, and the hidden truths quietly worrying the nations downstream. This isn't just another dam project. It's an attempt to re-engineer the movement of water itself in a region that supplies fresh water to more than 1 billion people. The Tibetan Plateau has long been called the Third Pole, not just because it's cold, but because it holds the third largest reserve of fresh water on the planet. Vast glaciers stretch across it, ancient ice melting at a measured pace, feeding rivers that run through 10 different countries. The Yellow River begins here. So does the Mekong, the Yangtze, and one of the most volatile rivers on Earth, the Yarlung Tsangpo. This river isn't gentle. In one stretch, it drops more than 6,000 feet in just 30 miles. That kind of descent doesn't happen randomly. It exists because the Indian tectonic plate is still pushing into the Eurasian plate, forcing the Himalayas upward year by year. The land fractures, gorges deepen, pressure builds, and where there's pressure like that, there's energy. Enormous energy, the kind engineers dream about, the kind China now wants to capture. The Yarlung Tsangpo doesn't stay in China. After flowing east across Tibet, it takes a sharp turn south and crosses into India, where it becomes the Brahmaputra. From there, it moves into Bangladesh before finally emptying into the Bay of Bengal. Along the way, millions depend on it. Farmers irrigate their fields with it, cities drink from it. Entire ecosystems rise and fall with its seasonal rhythms. Right now, China is building what would be the largest hydroelectric project ever attempted, right at the river's most violent bend, right where it drops the hardest, right where the energy potential is impossible to ignore. The project is called the Medog Hydropower Station. If completed, it would generate roughly 3 times more electricity than the Three Gorges Dam, the current global benchmark. But this isn't a simple wall across water. To make it work, engineers are drilling tunnels through the mountains themselves, tunnels stretching nearly 12 miles each. Half the river's flow would be diverted underground, accelerated through rock, forced into turbines buried deep inside the mountain, then released back into the river downstream. It's called run-of-river hydropower. On paper, it sounds cleaner than traditional dams. No massive reservoir, no visible lake swallowing villages. Just water redirected, used, and returned. But theory and reality don't always align, especially in a place like this. Engineers have known about this site for decades. The challenge was never imagination. It was geology. This region is one of the most seismically active places on Earth. Earthquakes are routine, landslides are common. The rock itself is fractured and unstable, and the deeper you drill, the more pressure builds. The area was, for a long time, impossible to reach. Until 2013, there was no road leading into Medog County. All that was done had to be manually carried in, or it came in by airplane. The employees would have to deal with altitude sickness, freezing, and weather that would suddenly change from bad enough to kill them. The threat of landslides would wipe away the work done in a week, and forests dense enough would make it very hard even to get from one place to the next and put one's life at risk. But China has experience, more dams than any other country, deep pockets, and a decade-long push to modernize infrastructure across Tibet. Roads have been paved, power lines extended. What was once inaccessible is now, at least technically, reachable. So in July 2025, construction officially began. The target is 2033. If all goes according to plan, the plant will generate around 60,000 megawatts of electricity, roughly the equivalent of powering 3 Polands or nearly 80% of Germany. On paper, it's a triumph. But if that's true, why is India calling it a ticking time bomb? Why are politicians in New Delhi openly describing it as a potential weapon? Why are environmental groups warning about floods, droughts, and displacement? The answer is control. Once the project is complete, China will have the ability to regulate a river that doesn't belong to them alone. They'll decide how much water flows downstream, when it flows, and how fast. Downstream in India's Arunachal Pradesh, the Brahmaputra isn't just a river, it's a lifeline. During dry months, before the monsoon arrives, water from Tibet becomes critical. Even a 10 or 20% reduction can mean failed crops, empty wells, and shortages in communities that already live on the edge. And then there's the opposite danger: sudden releases, especially during monsoon season when the river is already swollen. That combination can be devastating. India knows what flooding looks like. In 2012, Brahmaputra floods killed over 100 people and displaced 6 million. It happened again in 2015, again in 2016. Nearly every year since, parts of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh have been hit. Those floods were natural. Once the Medog project is operational, floods may no longer be. China insists there's little to worry about. Officials argue that most of the Brahmaputra's water comes from monsoon rains and tributaries within India, not from Tibet. Some studies agree, estimating that water originating in China makes up roughly 30% of the river's total flow. But 30% is still enormous. And during weak or delayed monsoons, that Tibetan water becomes far more important than statistics suggest. Even small adjustments at the wrong moment could trigger serious local crises. The deeper issue is trust. China and India don't share a water-sharing treaty. There's no formal agreement on flow levels, emergency releases, or dispute resolution. China doesn't have such treaties with any of its downstream neighbors. Once the dam is operational, affected countries would have no legal mechanism to respond if something goes wrong. Then there's the worst-case scenario: failure. Tibet sits directly on a major fault zone. In 1950, an earthquake measuring 8.7 tore through the region. In 2015, Nepal's 8.1 quake killed thousands and damaged infrastructure across the Himalayas. In January 2025, another major earthquake struck Tibet itself. Over 100 people died. Tens of thousands of buildings were damaged. Several hydropower facilities developed cracks. One dam tilted so badly that 1,500 people had to be evacuated. If an event like that strikes Medog while water is being diverted or stored, the outcome wouldn't be gradual. It would be instantaneous. A wall of water racing through narrow valleys, crossing into India with no warning and no time to escape. Unlike seasonal floods, dam failures release everything at once with overwhelming force. India is responding. Downstream, it has begun planning the Upper Siang Hydropower project, designed to hold back massive volumes of water and act as a buffer against a sudden surge from upstream. Officials describe it as a defensive necessity. If built, it would become India's most powerful hydroelectric plant, generating more than 11,000 megawatts. But the cost is high. 27 villages would be submerged. Over 150,000 people, many from the Adi tribe, would be displaced. For them, the Brahmaputra isn't infrastructure. It's sacred. It defines their culture, their history, their identity. Protests have already begun. Environmentalists warn of forest loss and ecological damage. Still, momentum is building. Energy security and national safety tend to outweigh everything else. And then there's Bangladesh. This river doesn't stop at India. The mighty Brahmaputra in Bangladesh feeds millions through its supported agriculture. A government estimate suggested that a mere 5% cut in its flow could slice agricultural output by 15% in some regions. That's not abstract, that's food security. Not everyone agrees on the scale of the risk. Some experts argue the dam is simply too far upstream to matter, that by the time the water reaches Bangladesh, tributaries and rainfall may compensate. Maybe they're right. Maybe everything balances out. Or maybe it doesn't. That uncertainty is the problem. This isn't a controlled experiment. It's a gamble involving hundreds of millions of people across 3 nations. Since 2000, China has launched nearly 200 hydropower projects across Tibet. 60% are still in planning or early construction. Medog is just one piece of a much larger strategy to harness the plateau's energy potential. From an engineering standpoint, it makes sense. From a human standpoint, it's far more complicated. Rivers aren't just power sources, they're living systems. Alter them upstream and everything downstream changes. Ecosystems, agriculture, politics. Some scientists argue the greatest danger isn't this dam itself, but the precedent it sets. If a project of this scale can be built without consultation, what stops the next one? Or the next? The Tibetan Plateau feeds rivers that sustain more than 1 billion people. Once those rivers are controlled, the balance of power shifts. Construction is already underway. Roads have been carved into the mountains. Equipment is moving in. Tunnels are being drilled. By 2033, the Yarlung Tsangpo may have a new master. Not nature, not the seasons, but a system designed to decide who gets water and when. This isn't just about electricity, it's about control. About reshaping landscapes and futures far beyond the place where the decision was made. And perhaps that's what makes this project so unsettling. Not what it promises to deliver, but what it quietly reveals about how little the voices downstream matter. If you found this documentary insightful, subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.